So the day that this video is being released is March 16th, which happens to be the 6-year anniversary of the starting of this channel. And so I wanted to come up with a video idea. I realized this not too long ago, and so I wanted to come up with a video or come up with something that I could do as a celebration for that. And I didn't really have a whole lot of great ideas, and it wasn't very long ago, and I didn't have a lot of time to sit and think about what I was going to do. I was reminded of a couple years ago, I think it was for the 3-year video, we talked about our 3 favorite books from the first 3 years of the channel. And so I was thinking about that, and I was like, well, maybe I could do 6 books for this video, and instead of favorite books, instead of rehashing that, I could instead just take 6 random books from the year that I read them and talk about them, one from each year. And so that's what I did. I came up with 6 books. None of these are necessarily my favorite books that I read of the year that I read them, but they are ones that stood out to me, and they are all, with the exception of one, I currently have physically on my shelves. And so I wanted to pick them up, and I'll talk about the one when I get there. But yeah, I wanted to just give some short recommendations and talk a little bit about why these books were so interesting to me and why I enjoyed them as much as I did. So that's what I have done here, and I'm just going to pick up the books and go through them and talk about them a little bit. The first one that I have, though, is Dark Disciple by Christie Golden. This is a Star Wars tie-in novel, and this is actually, I guess before I describe what the book is, I'll just mention this. I am a huge fan of Star Wars. I really enjoy Star Wars, but recently some of the books that I've been reading, I read Aftermath and Aftermath Empire's End. Those 2 books weren't particularly enjoyable to me. I didn't love them. I thought they were rather middling at best. And so I kind of have been thinking about the good Star Wars books that I've read and wanting to read some of the other ones. And plus, there's been some talk of Star Wars books going around the Booktube community recently, especially with Murphy Napier going through and reading a whole bunch of Star Wars books and talking about them, which has been super fun for me to watch and to hear her excitement and her enjoyment of the books. But anyways, because of that, I've been thinking about the Star Wars books that I have enjoyed, and one of them was this Dark Disciple. A good portion of that is because of how much I love the Clone Wars TV series. That's a series that I feel like is fantastic, tells some excellent stories along the way, and just becomes really impactful. And so the story in Dark Disciple is about 2 of the characters that you meet in the Clone Wars. One of them is a rather minor character, meaning Quinlan Vos, who's a Jedi in the series, and just he has only a couple episodes that he appears in or has much to do with. But the other character is much more prominent in the series, but still a side character, and that is Asajj Ventress. And she's a character who, her journey through the Clone Wars is one of being Count Dooku's lead assassin, his highest assassin, his apprentice even to some degree, and just someone of huge import to the separatist movement. There's a lot of jokes made at her expense throughout the series, and I always found them funny because I never really cared much for the character. But as the series progresses, I started appreciating her more and more and seeing how her story develops and stuff like that. And so I picked this book up knowing that it's actually based off of an unfinished arc of the Clone Wars. And so that had me intrigued, and I wanted to see what Christie Golden could do with that story that's being told, and I also just wanted to see that story told. And so I went to this book and came to it and just read the story and really enjoyed what's going on. I don't know that it's my favorite Star Wars book I've ever read, but I had a really good time with it, and I remember just really enjoying it and enjoying Golden's writing and her style and everything like that, and just the way that she was able to craft this story that I had heard bits and pieces of, and I'm not positive if there is unfinished or like partially rendered scenes or anything like that for this arc. I know there are for many of the other unfinished arcs of Clone Wars, but this one I have heard a lot about over the years, and I had wanted to read it, and so I picked up the book, and I really enjoyed the book, and I really appreciated the story that was being told, and it develops the characters and makes them, well, relatable to some degree, but also just makes you enjoy the characters and the story that's being told with them and the way that it fits into this latter end of the Clone Wars. I had a good time with it, and I had a very fun time reading this book and learning this story, and I wanted to mention it because the Star Wars books have been on my mind lately, and this one just was the one that stood out most when I was looking through my list of books that I read in 2020 for a book that I could just talk about and share a little bit about. Moving on then to 2021, and that I was again just looking through the books that I'd read, and the one that stood out to me was Calculated by Nova McBee. This is one where I have a little bit of a strange relationship with book 1 because I didn't adore the story of book 1 that much, but I was intrigued enough to say, I think I want to read book 2. And so I read book 2, and the same, very similar thing happened, and I was like, I think I want to read book 3, but if book 3 doesn't really pick up and make this something special, it's probably not going to be a favorite series of mine. Well, it's a favorite series of mine, so book 3 clearly did something special and makes me very, very excited for book 4 to release later this year. But going back to my thoughts on book 1 for just briefly, I don't want to spend too much time on any of these books that I'm talking about, but going back to book 1, Calculated, I didn't know what to expect from it. I had heard that it was kind of like a spy thriller, revenge, Count of Monte Cristo mixed with Mission Impossible type story. And I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of intriguing. I'm curious what that's going to be about. And then I picked up the first book and read it and had some good discussion with some friends about it. But kind of the consensus with most of my friends was that it was okay. It wasn't the best thing they'd ever read. A lot of them said, but I'll probably read the sequel, which is kind of where I landed with it. Some of them liked it more than I did. That's fine. That's not the important part of the discussion. But as I was thinking about this series and what drew me to it and what made me so interested in it, the fact of the matter is it wasn't the story so much as it was the character and her ability to the way that she sees the world. She has kind of an ability to view the world differently than most people, and that is she sees the world through mathematics and calculations and numbers. And the way that works, the way that it's explained, it's treated in some ways like a superpower or even a magical ability, but at the same time, it's so realistic. The way that it's portrayed and the way that it functions is kind of just like, oh, but this is just how the character sees the world. It's not something fantastic or supernatural or anything. It's just something slightly different. And the portrayal of that was so fascinating to me and so interesting to me that I was like, okay, I'm curious how they can take this story and this character and move forward into book 2. And so it was really that aspect, the world and the character that was being developed, that made me want to continue the series. And I'm glad that I did, because even though book 1 is not my favorite book of all time, by the time you get to book 3, it's one of my favorite series. And I really love book 3, but also as you go through the series, you meet one of my favorite characters of all time, and one of the characters that I find myself relating to a lot. I really love the character. You actually meet him in book 2 is where he comes in, but it's a character that I have grown very attached to in a series that I've grown really attached to, and I can't wait to wrap up the series with book 4 later this year. So I'm very excited about that. So I don't know how that really works as a recommendation, if that's something that pushes the needle for some people on this one, but I'm really glad that I read this and continued on past book 1, because book 1 was good enough, but it's really, well, for me, it's really moving on past book 1, but then also now looking back at book 1 and seeing what it's doing, seeing how it's being set up, and just appreciating what McBee did with this first book. I'm not having good luck filming this video. This is the third time that I've tried doing this, and let's keep going, see if I can get through the rest of this video. Anyways, the next one that I want to talk about, the book that I read in 2022 that I wanted to point out, was The Desert of Wheat by Zane Grey. And this is one where I'd read Desert Gold by him in 2020, in the first year that we were doing the channel, and I almost talked about that one, but Dark Disciple kept coming to my mind instead. And let's hope that my audio keeps up and my video keeps working and everything like it's supposed to. Let's see if I can get focused in on to finish this video up for the third time. So this is I love Westerns. I love the genre, and I don't read enough of it, but every time I do, I really enjoy it. And so I've been enjoying the Westerns, and I enjoyed the first Zane Grey that I read, and I wanted to read more, and so I picked up The Desert of Wheat, because this is another Zane Grey book that I had on my shelves, and so I wanted to read it and see what he had to say about it. And it's a story about a young boy who's a farmer in, I believe it's Washington. It's either Washington or Oregon or something like that. And he's a farmer, but it's set right at the beginning of World War I, and so he's wanting to go join the war and go fight for his country. I don't remember all the reasons why he wasn't able to go join. Part of it is due to the fact that he's a farmer and the nation needs grain, needs its wheat. And so he stayed as a farmer for a significant portion of the war, and that's what he was trying to do. But throughout this whole time, he's wanting to go off to war and go fight and everything like that. And you find out through the telling of this story, you as the reader are like, yeah, I want him to go, I want him to fight for his country and everything like that. But as you're reading through the story, you're realizing, no, that's not the story. That's being told. And the story that's being told is about him as a wheat farmer. And the way that Gray is able to tell a story about something that should be dry, that should be really boring, and make it as engaging as he does, I just was kind of blown away by the story that Gray is telling. I had a great time with this story and with the novel that's being told here. And so it's something that in a lot of ways seems like it shouldn't work. There's some aspects of it that are like conspiracies and things going on in the US and stuff like that he's having to deal with. And as a way of Zane Grey making the story engaging and active while telling the story about a wheat farmer, which you'd think would be pretty dull. And so those things do help to add some interest and intrigue into the story, but it's really not the things that I enjoyed about the story. What I enjoyed about the story was the atmosphere, was the fact that we're reading a story about a wheat farmer, and Zane Grey tells this story, and it works, and it's interesting, and I am engaged in and invested in the story throughout the entirety of the book. And that's something that I really enjoyed. I had a great time with this book. So yeah, very much recommend reading Desert of Wheat as well, and I can't wait to read more Zane Grey. I have several other books on my shelves at this point of his that I need to. One of them is supposed to be read in Q1 of 2026. I doubt that's going to happen, but I'm still trying for it if possible. It's an MBR book, not a has to be read or TBR or anything like that. But still, I want to read more of Zane Grey because of the two that I've read. I've really enjoyed both of them. So the next one then that I have, which should be 2023 at this point, is a book by J.R. Tolkien, or rather a whole bunch of short stories by J.R. Tolkien. And this is my favorite author of all time. One of my most read, if not my most read author, due to how many times I've read and reread The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. But that is, of course, J.R. Tolkien. But the book is Tales from the Perilous Realm. And this is a collection of short stories and poetry and even an essay of his, all that are just compiled here into this book to tell these varying stories as a way of having them all compiled and easily accessible. It contains Roverandom, Farmer Giles of Ham, The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, Smith of Wootton Major, and Leaf by Niggle, as well as his essay on fairy stories, all of which are excellent. All of them I had an extremely fun time reading and exploring. The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is where I started with it. I wanted to read The Adventures of Tom Bombadil because of how because of how much I love the character in Lord of the Rings, but also because it's been one of those books, those stories that I've wanted to read since I first read Lord of the Rings. And I was like, I want to read these, but I can't find them anywhere. So I finally got this, and The Adventures of Tom Bombadil is actually, the first two are poetry about Tom Bombadil, but then, and two of his adventures as Tom Bombadil, but then the rest of them are just poetry, mostly from Middle-earth, some not from Middle-earth, or not directly tied to Middle-earth at the very least. It's just poetry, and it's a vast range of styles and quality, and I really appreciate seeing that and seeing how good of a poet Tolkien is. To go along with that, though, we have Roverandom, which is a book, or a story that in tone is very similar to The Hobbit and feels a lot like The Hobbit to me. It's just not quite as high fantasy. But what it is a story about a toy dog that gets lost, and so the toy dog has to go on all these adventures in order to get back to his owner. And that story, it's fascinating. The reason why it was written is fascinating, which has to do with Tolkien and his own children. But it's just a great story, one that I really enjoyed, didn't know what to expect at all from, but I had a great time with it. Then you come to Farmer Giles of Ham, which is a story about a farmer, and because he accidentally shows courage at one point, the whole community is like, all right, you have to go fight the dragon now. And so he goes off to fight the dragon, and the way that story works, it's just another fun, lighthearted story that you don't know what to expect from, but it just ends up being really enjoyable. And then Smith of Wootton Major is very similar in that it's a character, not similar in style or what's being told, the story that's being told or anything like that, but it's a character who really doesn't have a whole lot to do, but he goes and gets lost in Fairy and has to go through these adventures in Fairy in order to tell this story that's unfolding in front of him. And it's so much fun to read that story and to go experience that story. And then the last one, Leaf by Niggle, is very highly acclaimed. A lot of people love this story, and I think I had a little bit of, and I don't exactly know where that ends, but I'll go through my thoughts on Leaf by Niggle really quick again, and hopefully that catches everything that I was saying. Basically, I went into Leaf by Niggle thinking with maybe some too high of expectations, because I'd heard all of the accolades that have been thrown at this story over the years. And it is fantastic. It's great. I just, because of that, I think I expected more from it than it was, and I enjoyed it slightly less than the other ones, just on raw enjoyment factor, because I was expecting something so much more. But that's not to say that it's not fantastic or great, because it really is. There's a whole lot there. Everything that people say about it is absolutely true. But it's a fantastic story. I love what Tolkien's doing with it. I love the way that he's exploring art, and he's exploring creation and sub-creation and finishing what you start, and the doing what you set your mind to, and all these things. The way that he is weaving those things into the story here, it's fantastic, and I really do love Leaf by Niggle as well. Then the final thing in this book is his On Fairy Stories essay, and that essay is just full of fascinating concepts, discussions, themes, knowledge, wisdom. There's so much in that essay, and I had a fantastic time reading the essay because of how much there is and how much it goes into the mind of Tolkien. And so I really love that essay as well. But overall, this is just one of those books that I think people ignore, people push to the side, because either they don't know that it exists, or they don't look past the fact that Tolkien's written more than The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, or maybe The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and Silmarillion. And this kind of being aside and outside of the legendarium to some degree means that people look past it and ignore it. And I think that that's not a good thing to do, because the stories here are fantastic and well deserving of a place alongside the rest of Tolkien's works, because just they're that good, and Tolkien always is that good. All right, so continuing here though, we have the next book that I do own it physically. It's just not currently on my shelves because my sister-in-law is borrowing it, and so I can't talk about it in the same way by holding it up physically and showing it to you. But that is Taliesin by Stephen R. Lawhead. And the Pendragon Cycle is a series that I adore. It's the most recent series that I have just binged the entire series of, one book right after another with nothing in between any of them. And partly due to they were available at that time for me to do that with, and so I did that with them, but also just because of how much I was enjoying them and how much I enjoy the Arthurian literature and the genre of King Arthur stories and retellings and everything. But Taliesin specifically is the first book in the series. It's set pre-Camelot, pre-Arthur, and tells the story of the fall of Atlantis, the sinking of Atlantis. And so it weaves in the Atlantis myth into it. It weaves in a whole bunch of other aspects of the King Arthur myth that people forget about a lot of times, like, and especially the Fisher King, which is a story and an aspect of the King Arthur story that I love, that people forget about it, people ignore it, but it's so much fun to me. That's one of those ones that I just really love, and people don't know about it nearly as much. But that story, the story of Taliesin, I think part of what makes it so impactful to me is the fact that it is about a bard, about a musician and a storyteller, which that's who I consider myself to be, not a bard because I don't have the skill in order to be that. But the musician and the storytelling aspect of that really resonate with me and really help me relate to the character. But beyond that, Taliesin is also just one of my favorite characters that I've read in a very long time. And I love the character of Taliesin. I love the fact that he's a bard, yes, but also just his character and his personality and his journey and his story and the way that he grows through the world, and the story that's being told about him. It's just something that really resonates with me and I really enjoy. And so that also contributes, but also the fact that it's Arthuriana, and we're seeing the ground being laid for the King Arthur story, for Camelot, for the Knights of the Round Table, for all of that stuff to come forth. But it's done in a historical fiction way, or historical fantasy way rather. Lots of history woven into it, and it's told from a Christian outlook. The author is Christian, and it's kind of exploring Britain through the lens of Christianity in a lot of ways. And so I really appreciate all of those things, and there's just a whole lot in the book that I find myself relating to a lot. So I really, really enjoyed Taliesin. It is back in my mind for a lot of reasons, one of which being that I've been seeing people talk about it recently, or saying, oh, I'm rereading this or whatever, and that's great. But I've also been reading Aurelia by Stephen R. Lawhead, which is a prequel book set sometime during, I would say it's set sometime during the events of Merlin, which is book 2 in the Pendragon Cycle. But it's about a different character and telling a different story. And so that's in my mind, and seeing all of that and everything like that. But the other thing that makes it at the forefront of my mind is that the TV series, the Pendragon Cycle, The Rise of the Merlin, has just finished airing. And I've been watching that as it comes out. I've been waiting for it to come out and I've been excited for it since they first announced that they were making it. It was being made and everything like that. So I've been waiting and waiting for the show, and then it comes out, and I had a good time with the show. I enjoyed the show and the adaptation, and I really hope to get more because it was good. It was very good, and I want more of the series. But through that, I was reminded constantly about how much I love Taliesin in that book, and so I just want to go back to it. And so it's definitely in my mind at the moment, as in a very prominent place in my mind at the moment. So I definitely wanted to mention it, even though I don't physically have the book in my hand that I can hold up at the moment. That then takes us to 2025, the 6th year of the Booktube channel. And the book that I want to talk about is one that I've actually talked about quite a bit recently on the channel, but part of that is due to how far behind I am on things and stuff like that. But it's a book that really stood out to me when I read it. I didn't know what to expect from it, but I went into it hopeful that I would enjoy it. And I came away having enjoyed it greatly. And that is The Crimson Fire by Abel Montero. And this is one where the author said, hey, do you want an arc for it? And I was like, okay, that sounds great. I'll give it a read. And I read the book, and I really, really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the story that was being told, the style that Montero writes in, but also the fact that it's clean. I love the fact that it's clean fantasy. There is some stuff implied. There's some stuff that's like fade to black or whatever, but he keeps it clean. He doesn't include a whole bunch of language, and it's just I really appreciate that. Those things alone made me enjoy the book so much more than I would have just on the merits of this story. But that being said, the story is also very fun, very good, very interesting. And the world that Montero is building up here, it starts out by you following a character, and you're like, oh, this character is really cool. I am enjoying this a lot. And the further you get into the book, you're like, oh, I should not be rooting for that character at all. And it's just the way that he weaves this story and tells it and builds it out and everything. There's a lot that you don't understand immediately, but it's revealed. There's things that are revealed. There's things that are, as you go through it, you start understanding what's going on and who the characters are and little pieces of this world. You're just getting very small pieces of how this world works. And I had a fantastic time with this book, and then he was kind enough to send me the physical book as well. And book 2 is coming out later this year, 2026, and so I'm very excited for book 2 as well. But it's a book that kind of took me by surprise in a lot of ways. I wasn't expecting it, and I wasn't expecting to enjoy it nearly as much as I did. And so the fact that it just kind of landed on my lap, and I just picked it up and started reading and just had a fantastic time with it, that made me really excited, and I want to recommend it because of that. And also, it is a self-published author, and I believe this is the only book by a self-published author that I've mentioned here. And so it's well worth me mentioning one, because I do read a lot and I like supporting them. Before my recording software and everything crashes again, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. Thank you for being here with us. Some of you have been here since the first months of the channel. Some of you are newer, but I thank you all for being here, and I really appreciate the support that you've given us. So I don't know what all is going to happen in this next year, but I'm excited for the adventures that we're going to be having, the journeys that we're going on for sure. There's going to be I'm going to continue reading, I'm going to continue talking about books as much as I can. So thank you guys for watching and sticking with us for this long. Since this video is coming out in March, I'm going to mention this. I chose the wrong month to start doing double reviews for each week, because usually I do 2 videos per week, and in March it's going to be like 3-4 videos per week, and that's a lot for me. I don't know how I'm going to keep up with that, but I'm going to try my best. And so, but anyways, I am very grateful for the support you've given me, and I just like going on this adventure, learning about storytelling and books and everything. So thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.